The knight summons 4 of his Pokemon to do battle with our lil monster. He makes the Murkra use Air Cutter, but it has no effect, so he makes Magikarp use Water Gun. Komoko dodges the attack but gets knocked down while the tiger pounces. She decides to use her Gravity Eye to flatten them on the ground and copies Murkra's Air Cutter to defeat it. He tries to command his Torterra, but she already sent him to the Promised Neverland. The knight summons more defenseless animal to distract Komoko with her favorite activity, until only 2 of them is left. She charges a spear to disarm the mage and makes a hole in the knight, right before they can teleport away. At the base, they call for a doctor to appear so they can be healed. Now in present time, the mage assumes that Komoko may be the one behind all of this, since Julius was attacked by a spider. We head back to Shun. He practices with his sword while Faye watches him. She reveals that the tank was the only one who survived from Julius's party, and one day he's going to have to fight the one who smoked them. He reveals that he is nervous about fighting as the hero, so Faye suggests that they should make a pact. He disagrees, but she insists on it, so he takes her arm and binds them together with a spell. She suddenly glows and reverts to an egg because she's evolving. In the night, the tank comes to visit Shun. He immediately kneels and apologizes for not bringing back his brother. He tells Shun that the only reason he survived was because of an item that Julius forced him to take. He explains that after they defeated the demon commander, a woman dressed in all white came and wiped them out in an instant. After he was brought back, the only thing that was left of Julius was his scarf. Shun takes it and begins reminiscing about the times he had with his brother as he promises to bring peace to the world. The tank asks to protect him like he didn't do for his brother, so Shun accepts him into his party. We head over to our favorite genocidal maniac, who managed to max out the taboo skill and now has access to all the secrets of the universe. She struggles to understand it all but comes to the conclusion that this world is going to be destroyed unless she is able to stop it, so Komoko decides that she needs to get stronger and wants to challenge the strongest earth dragon in the cave. Her other brains disagree, so she corrects them real fast since the world is at stake. She heads to the lower level where she encounters a high-level Arbok who goes into a tunnel. She walks away but hears a fight and decides to have a peep and sees the Arbok beginning to strangle the dragon and pins him down with gravity magic. But it uses earth magic for acupuncture, then begins viciously tearing the snake apart while our little psychopath watches with admiration. The dragon fires a hyper beam at her, so she runs away to grind poor defenseless animals for XP. She uses a new technique she learned that annihilates all in her path, but does recoil damage, so she heals it. Komoko walks and encounters 2 more dragons, so she teleports home, and reveals that she marked them along with the humans she slaughtered, so she now knows the exit of the dungeon. Komoko sees some wasps living peacefully, so she decides to genocide them for more space to fight the dragon. Our monster starts off by using airwalk to get closer, so she can assaulting the creatures with magic. They try to defend themselves, but it's no use as she laughs at the massacre she's creating. The mother confronts her after seeing her children being slaughtered, but she uses an illusion to fool it, while she goes to use a barrage of black magic to commence a great cleansing upon their species until they cease to exist. Komoko explains that abyss magic takes too long to activate and elemental magic are too weak, so her main form of attack will be her black magic along with the new sloth skill she has obtained. Our overpowered spider confronts the dragon and charges at him, but he chases her, while she hits him with a gatling of black magic, then decides to go all out. However, every time she reduces his HP, it automatically refills. He uses Hyper Beam on her Mirage. While she goes above him to blow his mind, it uses Tail Whip, so she dodges and starts a magical fight where the dragon uses the chance to get close to her, so she uses her webs to dodge all his follow-up attacks. The dragon starts blasting her, then close in to use Fury Swipe, but stops right before he encountered her web trap. She begins to charge her poison, but he dodges it, so she begins throwing it at him, but he begins throwing death back at her. She switches to using webs to slow him down, but he dodges all her attacks and goes in for lunch. But our Lil Menace sets a trap for him to restrain the dragon inside her web and begins using her skill to make him feel unimaginable pain. Komoko begins using all the magic skills she have to beat the crap out of her hostage, but the dragon has black force energy and breaks out. She realizes that it used all his skill points he had to gain resistance to her black magic while tracking teleportation with some fire so he can smoke her. He uses Erupt to create a hellscape, then use Fire Charge to get into close combat. Komoko runs for her life while gaining new skills, but the dragon also is learning new abilities and nearly hits her with Tail Whip. She is now cornered by the ceiling, so she's forced to fall down into a fiery inferno while avoiding his aura spares. The fire begins doing damage to her, so she runs to a safe space, but the dragon uses a spike to impale her. He goes to finish the fight, but Komoko sacrifices 2 of her eyes to damage him, then cuts off her parts to escape the trap. She falls further down the dungeon, so she jumps off the wall straight into fire and teleports above him, but the dragon sensed her, so it goes to have a bite. While in his mouth, she uses rod attack to escape and falls on her airwalk. He jumps up in the sky to finish the fight, so Komoko gets up and hits him with the sloth skill. They both fall down to the ground, being critically injured and unable to move. Komoko reveals that her plan was to use the sloth ability to burn through the opponent's stamina at a faster rate. She sees the poor defenseless animal and goes over to end it, but the dragon stands up and is satisfied with the battle's outcome. She recognizes that he is a fellow menace and gives him a peaceful end, then walks away as she goes up to level 29. Komoko walks to the exit and runs into the light, awaiting her new adventure. She exits the dungeon and notices that they put a fort around it, so she decides to cause a little genocide before heading outside. Our little spider wanders around while sightseeing, but she gets hungry and looks for food. Komoko suddenly gets a transmission from her mom telling her to come back home, but she has the interference skill, so she decides to ignore it and run away. We head over back to Shun's home. He gets ready to go to a meeting with the chief elf and Philome. They discuss whether Shun should go to the battlefield since he's the new hero, but the king says they need a plan first. The chieftain explains that the new demon lord is the strongest he has seen, and she is also the one who started all the conflict. He goes on to warn Shun about the leader of the holy movement and brings an end to their meeting. Over at Kadia's home, Sue comes in to say that she's grieving for Julius and is worried about Shun. She tells her that everything will be okay, as Hugo comes in to show them that he has regained his abilities. Back at Komoko's dungeon, a large number of spiders come spewing out and run directly for her. She meets them on a field and welcomes her siblings to their graveyard. They cut down a tree, ruining her trap, then rushes at her only to fall into another. She uses a skill to genocide her own family, but the higher leveled ones survived. They try to capture her, but she dodges all their webs and runs away. One tags her arm, so she removes it and continues doing the race until they fall into another trap. She crawls on top of her brother and teleport him to the lava level, but he uses airwalk to save himself, so Komoko jumps up and begins raining down death on her distraught sibling. He begins to resist her attack, so she goes all out to cut him off her family tree, but she retrieves his body and mourns him by eating his flesh. She returns to show her sibling what's about to happen to them, before giving her brothers a bath and desecrating their loot boxes as well. Mommy Spider begins screaming at her, so she decides to send her 3 other brains through the connection to eat her brain and cause her immense pain. Komoko walks around until she hears a couple of bandits attack a carriage. She decides to not get involved, but she sees a baby and goes in to support them by giving all her enemies an invitation to the Shadow Realm, then goes on to heal all the injured. The lady exits the carriage with the child. She realizes that she's both a vampire and a reincarnation like her. Komoko gets jealous of the RNG system, then runs away back to the forest from whence she came, but encounters some elves in the forest who plans to attack and kidnap the child. She watches them until they're safe. After taking care of the elves, we return to Shun's manor. He greets his father with Sue, but he says he didn't call them when Sue suddenly decides to blow her father's mind, then begins screaming hysterically. The guards comes in and restrains him. It's revealed that Hugo and his brother conspired to change Shun living status because his father was going to name him king. He uses appraisal on Sue and realizes that she is under the effects of mind control. Hugo gloats over his accomplishments, so Shun gives him a fisting and prepares to wipe them out, but Sophia enters the room to dispel his attack. Then Hugo decides to end him. He's blown away by wind as Philome grabs Shun and runs down the hall to meet up with the tank and his maid. They fight their way through to the entrance where they are surrounded. A rain of arrows appear as Shun's other brother comes to break him out. In the night, Philome explains that the church named Hugo as the new hero because of his brainwashing. Shun wants to fight, but he warns that Sophia is an enemy that none of them can beat. They notice that they're surrounded by Kadia's men. Shun jumps up and does battle with her while trying to undo the hypnotism. He overpowers and pins her down, but she fakes that leg shake to turn the fight in her favor. Kadia begins fighting the mind control and asks Shun to end her, but he refuses, so she does it herself. He cries while holding her body and uses his heroic skill to take her from the gates of heaven. He leaves her in the hand of the maid and joins the battle as Sophia arrives holding the thinker of Philome's father. She begins fighting Sophia but is quickly overpowered and held at her mercy, while Shun gets himself hurt in his fight. Right on time, Faye appears and saves all of them. Sophia heads to slay her, but she uses a hyper beam as a distraction so they can all escape from the ambush. Like the video if you liked the video, subscribe for more, and thanks for watching. Stay swifty.